Hello, hello. It's a sidecar working group meeting. Welcome, everybody. It's Tuesday, February 28th. We have Dave on agenda first.
Yeah, so some background for me. My name is Dave Protosowski. I work at VMware. I've been contributing to the Knative project for the last few years, and I'm kind of like the serving working group lead, which is essentially where people come to bring their containers to run in like a serverless way type of thing. We make an extensive use of a sidecar, so I'm just kind of coming here to highlight what we use it for, and just to make sure that whatever changes you're proposing help us. That's pretty much why I'm here. So as a quick, I'll just kind of go through the things quickly. What is Knative serving specifically? It's request-driven compute. Requests come in, things spin up, handle the requests, and they spin down. So that, and then we also abstract away a lot of networking details. So users sort of just define traffic splitting rules and other routing things, but they don't actually have to worry about like, how do you program Istio to do this stuff? How do you program Contour and Courier? So we provide like a thin abstraction over that. All this stuff predated Gateway API, but eventually we'll switch to that when that matures. So in terms of their CRDs, we kind of have like this top level service. The name's not great. Could call it like application or whatever, but essentially that boils down to like a route object and a configuration. As you make edits, we produce revisions that allows users to like roll back to a working revision and do traffic splitting across them, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of mentioned like you can set up routing this way as an example. So we have a sidecar and then so what I highlighted here is like we eventually create a deployment from the revision, reconcile it all the way down, and we configure like a sidecar with it. And what does it do? Well, it does a bunch of things. It's a reverse proxy inside the pod. So requests are routed to the sidecar, obviously. So, and the reason why we do this is to offer up metrics to our auto scaling system. So it uses sampling and things like that to figure out like the load, and we'll spin up new pods when there's more. And probably the big one too is like we kind of want this have this concept of concurrency, like, hey, this function or pod or user container can only handle one request at a time. You can set it to 5, 10, 1,000, et cetera, depending on your need. So this sort of enables like the FAS use case, and that the sidecar is what enforces that. This one's a bit interesting is as part of performance, we couldn't get probing to go below like the 1 second floor in period timeout on the container. So we actually sort of move the probing responsibility into our sidecar in order to get below that 1 second granularity. So this actually does help improve cold start to some degree. There's a lot of nuances with this one because like we might report ready, but then there's also like the node control loop that isn't like the timing of the node control loop, I forget what it's called. If it doesn't line up, then you can still get delays in readiness. That's why we kind of hope that like sub-second probing would be helpful for us in the future. Then we could hopefully drop that from our sidecar because we really want aggressive probes on start. And probably the big one is our sidecar is responsible for draining requests during shutdown. And we kind of do this even when the user's application or container doesn't know anything about like how to do a graceful shutdown. And I kind of want to like dig into that a little bit. So when we drain a request comes in, we proxy it to the user container. Now we have a deletion for whatever reason. What we actually do is we rewrite the pre-stop hook on the user container to actually hit our sidecar. And what does that mean is we that prevents the term signal from going to the user container. And then this lets our sidecar kind of like not trigger the shutdown of the user container until we actually properly drain all the requests. And in addition to draining, our queue proxy will like fake readiness, because it takes like, there's a delay between like your pod being not ready and it disappearing from the network layer. First, it has to show up in endpoints, the service endpoints, and then whatever networking layer you have, like Istio or Contour, it takes time for them to update their routing rules, not to include it in the load balancing. So eventually, after like the requests go away, we return the pre-stop hook, then the term hits the user container, and then eventually like the whole pod will just shut down gracefully. So I'm kind of here to just kind of like highlight what I would say our sidecar asks. So
can you go back and do you already override termination grace period seconds for both containers, or you just keep them?
We do as well, yeah. So we actually set our termination grace. So we have in our revision at the top level like a timeout for the request. We kind of set our grace period, I think, to like at least, I have to double check this, at least what the timeout is. So if the user expects their request to be able to be handled like, or the timeout 60 seconds, we have to set the termination grace period to that 60 seconds, because maybe even double it, because a request could come in after the deletion timestamp because of the lag in the network programming. So that's why our termination grace period is set much larger to handle like getting a late request, potentially hitting a top pod that's terminating, because it could be in flight. And then we want to give the request as times to succeed, and then also and have it to drain.
Is there some, can customer configure their termination grace period, like for additional cleanup?
So I guess one thing I didn't really highlight is like, we don't like, even though we expose like the pod template, we kind of like in here, this is really, I'm not giving people the full pod spec. We don't want them to do that. We don't want them, because the idea is like we'll do all these defaults for you. And then as a user, I would probably just specify, I think it would be even here, like what's my request timeout? I'll just do like a timeout to be like an example, like 60 seconds for the request. And then they don't need to know about pre-stop hooks, all these things. They don't technically have to worry about draining, because we'll do it this way. This is why we don't do the term signal, let it drain and then do the term signal, because like in theory, we add a bit more robustness to user containers as long as we can do the shutdown ourselves. Does that sort of answer your question on the? Yeah. So kind of what I written down as some asks is like, the reason what prompted me to come to this, because I remember in the doc there was like a recommendation for the signal order, and then I didn't see it in the thing. So I would kind of want to highlight like, hey, the order of term signals is important for us. We currently use, thankfully, the pre-stop hooks existed, so that we could actually halt the term on the user container and kind of like handle it in our sidecar, and have some mechanism of when term signals hit certain containers. This is why I kind of like flushed out like, hey, this pre-stop hook is very useful. It'd be cool to provide additional context, like, hey, are we restarting because of pod shutdown? Or are we restarting because of like liveliness is failing and things like that? We don't have a way to do that. There were some recommendations. Someone had like, oh, you could just like hit the API call and read the pod like when you get like a term signal. And it's like, on a large enough scale that doesn't really work. Especially if there's like a whole bunch of things shutting down. I think the other one that's probably important for us is being able to migrate from, like, our old style deployment has a container, our sidecar container in the container list, and it's seeing now that we have, I think in the proposal, the sidecar now is in the init block. We need a way to be able to migrate our existing users from like that older deployment to the newer one. I don't know how. Maybe it's more like, can I take an old deployment and then just like literally shift that one container into the init container with the restart never? And does that work? I hope it does. Maybe that's something that should be part of, I think, like a beta or GA criteria. I just don't recall. I haven't read the KEP in full detail. So if it's there, great. If it's not, then it's probably something to consider. This last point is that,
can we stop on here for a moment? So you're saying about deployments. So sidecars mostly solving jobs problem when restart policy is never. But in your case, it feels like you have a deployment when never restarts. So like, I mean, always restarts. So what does sidecar solve to you? Like, what's the biggest problem you want us to solve?
Oh, so I guess like for this one, because I know, for example, there are some fields on the deployment that are mutable and immutable. So if I'm not able to delete a container and move it, like in the deployment, and move it to the init container, then that effectively means in order to migrate existing users to adopt the sidecar, I need, like, via deployment, I'd have to like delete and create deployments and create new ones, which kind of is like introduces downtime.
Yeah, I see.
So yeah, so I guess like, yeah, that might then mean, I don't know if this is the group that's responsible. SIG Node is not responsible for deployments, right? That's like a SIG apps or something.
No, we are not, but this working group is supposed to solve the problem.
Oh, okay, you're like cross-functional. Okay, yeah.
Inviting people. Yeah.
And then this last one's not really an issue, but just something I've noticed. It's like sometimes users need to have their pod configured a certain way. For example, I think in order to use IAM on AWS, to reach out to some services, you have to set like FS group on the pod security defaults. But the challenge there is, like, as we kind of have this split between like, hey, this sidecar is really sort of a hidden component to the user. They're not meant to like go and poke at it, but setting these like pod security context properties can influence that sidecar. I'm not just highlighting that as a thing. I don't know what the solution there is. We haven't really been bit in it, but I could imagine like if this could be a problem in the future, but it's not like maybe the other example is Istio needed to do IP tables rerouting in the past, and for their sidecar, which I think needed potentially like some privileged access. So if you, for example, in your pod security context, set like disable all root users or something like that. I don't know if you can do that at the pod level, but then that would probably break the Istio sidecar as an example. So like, I don't know of a way to kind of say like, hey, this pod and its group of containers is controlled by the user, but then there's sort of this like sibling pod that is like a sidecar, has the same life cycle, but kind of might have a different set of permissions and properties. I don't think that one, I would put less. I don't think this last one is a real concern at this time. So it's just sort of like hey, just a heads up.
Yeah, we hear this request, and I think we put it into alternative solutions in a KEP. So it's down there. We hear this request, but it's not very well formulated. The same as you pointing out, it's a vague idea that needs to happen, but then you don't have any specifics yet.
Yeah, like my only thing in there is like our only use cases for routing traffic. So then really what we just need is like 2 pods in the same network namespace. But and I don't think it's a sidecar thing, but something else. So that's it. That's all I have. Hopefully this was useful, and hopefully
so you don't let your customers control any initialization ordering, right? So initialization doesn't really matter for you.
No, not really. But there have been requests for init containers. So in theory, we'd probably want to place our sidecar at the top. It'd be interesting to see, because right now we also let users bring multi-container as part of Knative, like bringing 2 containers. I don't really know what the use cases are there, because most people just kind of want to run like a single container, and that works for the majority of workloads. With the exception of like, actually, no, I don't have a good example there. So like our probing, even like we don't really probe other containers. We only probe containers we're going to be proxying requests to. But there's some semantics we need to figure out, like how do we interact with other containers as well. So what I mean by that then, and why am I mentioning it? Because to your questions, like, hey, what if a user then brings another, not a container, but another sidecar for some reason, like Dapper as an example in Knative for whatever reason. I don't know if that works or not. What are the implications? Like, I don't know. I would then hope that like, hey, maybe we can position our sidecar first and then their second, and maybe that all works. I don't have a good answer, I guess, to your question.
Okay. Yeah, I was mostly curious if this is a scenario that you have, then we can validate some assumptions we will be doing. Especially like startup is one, but then termination is also important. Like even now, we are not sure how to solve the logging and service mesh problem. Like how to express that one should go before another, and how to do it generically. So you can inject one, each of them by themselves, but them together as well. And ideally, the same configuration should work for both of them.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's why, again, like you're doing it in a container. So at least there's like, hey, if this starts first, then I don't have to kind of like, I can make some assumptions when I have something starting after that other one.
Yeah, and I would guess that you didn't introduce init containers because of this reason. You want to be first, but you cannot use init containers.
Yeah, that might be okay. I think as long as we start before and can manage like the container that's not the sidecar and not an init container, then I think we should be okay. So I don't think our use case is that complex. So
okay, thank you.
Cool.
Anybody has any more questions to Dave?
No question. That was interesting. Thanks a lot for doing this demo today, for this talk.
Yeah, no worries.
I did test out that second thing you mentioned. I was able to, for deployment, it looks like just selector is the only thing that's immutable as far as I could tell, and I can move containers back and forth between init containers and containers.
Okay, good.
By editing the deployment. So.
Yeah, hopefully that stays the same. Cool. Well, thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we will go into discussion implementation. If you want to, you can stay, but free to drop off.
I guess as decisions are made, what's the best way to track like new things?
We generally will. Maybe we will announce like. I really hope we will get to implementation this release, and then we will announce it on Slack for sure. As Matthias said in one of the PRs, code freeze is already pressing on us very, very firmly. So we may, there is a chance we can sleep, but I think I hope that we can push through.
Okay, cool.
It's a big
And then,
change.
and I guess like the other question I have is like, because I skimmed the KEP before the call, like in the doc you had an order for the term signals, but in the KEP there is not. Are you going to firm up an order or provide some optionality there prior to, I guess, alpha? Or is that something?
Alpha only concentrate on startup ordering and shut down for jobs. So this is a main promise for alpha. And shutdown ordering between containers and ordering among sidecars will be in beta.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, maybe it will help you, maybe like not. But you'll appreciate any feedback, especially when we start beta and like termination. We'll have a design fleshed out completely, then we'll appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, that'll be great. Cool. Okay. All right.
Thank you. I will go ahead and share my screen now. Do you see my screen now, or it's just black screen?
Yes, we see.
You see
Okay.
it.
Good. So following up from last week, I was extremely turned into a different direction, so I didn't participate too much, but I filed all the issues that I promised. So this is a sidecar branch, and I know that it's already have a few commits for. I mean, it has a PR for API change. Let me check really quick. Yeah, there is a PR. So yeah, I'll probably go ahead and merge this and rebase a branch. So this is just introduction of the restart policy field. Need to go through this. It should be all good. I glanced over it. It was good, so I will probably just merge it in. If you want to review, please go ahead. This API change. Py change API. Py day is coming. Then this is Uber issue. Just to get through. And Tim Hawkins was on vacation last week, so I will poke him. And I think Brunal was on vacation. He may still be, but he said that he may come back this week for just a couple approvals. So I will see if I can get anybody approve this proposed course of action. Okay, and now I think dedupe is still in progress.
Just wait on her.
Yeah, so we need approvers, right? So both of them. I think they will LGTM'd at some point. Yeah, this one is LGTM'd, and this one I don't. I thought I was waiting for this one. Yeah, fair point. Okay, yeah, this addresses all the concerns. I pinged Francesca at the moment when I reviewed it, and it seems that Francesca agreed with this change. Actually, we found a bug, right? Which is cool. Okay. Do you want to tell something about this PRs, Todd? Anything we need to know about?
I don't think so. So they can both go in. Yeah, the dedupe pod resources is going to save a lot of work. There's calculations all over the place, so it'll save time for both this and then the in-place pod resizing one as well.
Okay. Clarify. Yeah, this is. I think Matthias, if you can tell about this too, about your PRs.
Yes, sure. Can you just click on them? Yeah. So on, yeah, this one was just like modifying the problem manager to always work on the kube runtime status, something like this, instead of using the API v1 status. So the PR looks good now from me. The only issue I have is with the unit test. Yeah, the problem manager test. And that one needs some refactoring, but every time I try something, it's not quite working, and every time it takes me like half an hour to enter in the code. Then I try something, it doesn't work, and then I tried the day after, and I forgot everything that I tried. So I'm a bit struggling with it.
So what is not working? When you're trying to run this, or when you're trying to run in CI?
No, the thing is, so the test is based on you set some status, like a previous status, an existing status, and then a modification on this status, and then the expected one. And all of this is based on the API v1 status. But now that the program manager is working on the kube runtime status, so I need to change the input for this method to make something relevant. And I'm always struggling to make the right changes. So yeah, I don't know if someone can wants to have a look or ping me. But I will still try for the next few days. But yeah, for the moment I'm kind of stuck.
Okay.
And the worst thing is that if you take like the real tests where you have the program manager and the kubelet running and everything, it works because the mechanism of using the kube runtime status to set the API status is working well. So it's only this unit test that needs some refactoring to take into account the new logic. So
okay. And in terms of changes here, did you change the place we update? So it used to be in this generate API pod status, right? So now it's in
it's still called, but it's called much earlier in the method.
It's called before find next init container, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you'll have this status. Okay. Yeah, I will see. Like as I said, last week was like super crazy for me, and I plan to spend more time on sidecars this week. So hopefully we can ping me on Slack if you have continuous trouble. I will try to help.
Okay, but at least if someone wants to review everything except the program manager test, it's ready. Now I just need to tweak this test to have something meaningful. And the problem is that I wrote also to Clayton in the comments is that every time I change it, it seems to me that the test is irrelevant. So.
Okay.
So we definitely need a unit test for this method, but the way we do it now with the new logic, yeah, I'm not sure it's testing what it should test.
Okay. And I see that you made it non-pointer. So assuming that it will initialize with false. So now we don't need this other PR that you had, right? So now we always have it as false.
I think yes. That's why I did this way. It makes no sense to have a pointer here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, if anybody wants to help with unit tests, please help Matthias.
I'll look at it today.
Brian, do you want to help?
Yeah, I'll look at it today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But you can ping me tonight, not too late. Like if you ping me in the next 5 hours, I will probably reply, but not later on the next 4 hours. But I can definitely follow up tomorrow morning.
Don't forget to have a sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. And Todd, I remember you sent this PR about life cycle tests that we can use. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just pasted it there in chat. So this was just taking your idea from last week of having having containers basically write to a common log file and then just looking and doing analysis of the log file at the very end to figure out like kind of what went on. So I worked that up in this one. I like the way it turned out. The tests are a lot easier to write. So basically, you have some container configs, and you just sort of configure like what cap of container is this, how long is the delay, what's its exit code, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you scroll down a little bit farther, there's a sample of the output file it generates. And then, yeah, so that's kind of what the output file looks like. It's just a single file. And in a shared volume, it's mounted to all the containers, or mounted to the containers. And then you can just do some tests, like ensure that a knit starts before, knit 1 starts before knit 2, knit 1 exits before knit 2, et cetera, all the way through. And then once you have sidecars in there, then you can sort of imagine like, okay, ensure that your sidecar starts before any knit containers after it, and your sidecar never exits, that sort of stuff.
How do you get this file back to the test?
If we scroll down, yeah. So these are the pods. So there's that shared volume. I think I did it's a host path directory. So I think I ran make temp to create a shared directory on the host and then mounted them in.
So in your case, like test and node running on the same host, right?
I'm sorry?
Test and node are running on the same host. That's how you do it.
Oh,
because sometimes we have tests that, this is.
Yeah, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, so yeah, it assumes that the oh yeah, so I get what you're saying. I did think of like one way of working around that would be to like at the very end, and it kind of gets a little harder to work out, but basically have some pod that cats that file off of the test basically, so that you can then read it, somehow to transfer it. But yeah, if you're trying to like launch pods on a different host than where the tests are running, yeah, you can't share the same file.
Okay, but I think this may work for E2E node folder, because that's how we run CI at least.
Yeah, and even in the remote runs, your tests are still running on the node, so it should be good.
But not for other like no E2E/node. In that case, tests are running on a different machine.
Yeah, and it could be adapted. You could use like using a config map. That's kind of not great. I'm trying to figure out, is there some great, some other way for the test to communicate back?
No, I think it's perfect. For this folder, it should be working fine. Does it run normally? Like, did you check the test actually shows up in this CI?
Well, I didn't test they showed up in the CI. I tested them locally to ensure that they ran, but yeah, I guess I didn't think.
This one probably will have it. Yeah, I don't remember which one will have it, but if it's not serial or anything, it will be fine.
Yeah, I'll verify that it shows up there.
Okay.
I have to say I had a look when you pushed your latest commit, like yesterday or Sunday, I don't remember. It's just great what you did. Like really nice interface, everything. Cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so now we can start writing tests to validate existing logic. I'll talk to David Porter. He was working on some things with Clayton for startup ordering, a termination perhaps. So maybe they will adapt it as well. Cool. Okay, and I think what also need to happen, I will try to do this I'll try to do this CI for sure, and maybe I will try your approach with end-to-end tests. So try to write some end-to-end tests so we have some framework before we send this big PR here.
What do you mean you're going to try to do the CI thing? What are you thinking of doing?
Oh, in terms of CI, I want to create a new job that will run specifically sidecar jobs with a stack. So it will be empty for now, but once we have a big PR, we can validate this big PR right away with end-to-end tests.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we needed to set the alpha feature, no?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
But
I
I
want to
mean,
see that.
this is why we need to have separate definition. So it will be setting this alpha feature.
I want to see it when you do that. I want to figure out how to set those things up.
Okay. Yeah, I can show you example. I think we have just recently somebody added another example. Okay, then I don't have anything else. I think I will try to find approvers for PRs, and we'll start sending my PRs. So maybe end of week we'll have more progress. Anything else? Okay,
So now we have 2 weeks.
Yes. 2 productive weeks, I would say. Yeah, we'll
You mean
try.
2 weeks till freeze?
Yeah.
I mean, in place pod upgrade also haven't merged yet, and I'm super worried about it. If it will enter last minute, it may change some code for us as well. Let's see. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
Bye.
you.
thank you very much. See you.